TC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number. Analysis. Research psychologists often work with self-report data, made up of participants' verbal accounts of their behavior. This is the case whenever questionnaires, interviews, or personality inventories are used to measure variables. Self-report methods can be quite useful. They take advantage of the fact that people have a unique opportunity to observe themselves full-time. However, self-reports can be plagued by several kinds of distortion. One of the most problematic of these distortions is the social desirability bias, which is a tendency to give socially approved answers to questions about oneself. Subjects who are influenced by this bias work overtime trying to create a favorable impression, especially when subjects are asked about sensitive issues. For example, many survey respondents will report that they voted in an election or gave to a charity when in fact it is possible to determine that they did not. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number. 01. There is little doubt that we are driven by the sell-by date. Once an item is past that date, it goes into the waste stream, further increasing its carbon footprint. Remember, those items have already traveled hundreds of miles to reach the shelves, and once they go into waste they start a new carbon mile journey. But we all make our own judgment about sell-by dates. Those brought up during the Second World War are often scornful of the terrible waste they believe such caution encourages. 2. The manufacturer of the food has a view when making or growing something that by the time the product reaches the shelves it has already been traveling for so many days and possibly many miles. The manufacturer then decides that a product can reasonably be consumed within say 90 days, and 90 days minus so many days for traveling gives the sell-by date. 9090. But whether it becomes toxic is something each individual can decide. It would seem to make sense not to buy large packs of perishable goods, but non-perishable items may become cost-effective. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number. 02. Human beings like certainty. This liking stems from our ancient ancestors who needed to survive alongside saber-toothed tigers and poisonous berries. Our brains evolved to help us attend to threats, keep away from them, and remain alive afterward. In fact, we learned that the more certain we were about something, the better chance we had of making the right choice. Is this berry the same shape as last time? The same size? If I know for certain it is, my brain will direct me to eat it because I know it's safe. And if I'm uncertain, my brain will send out a danger alert to protect me. The dependence on certainty all those millennia ago ensured our survival to the present day, and the danger alert system continues to protect us. This is achieved by our brains labeling new, vague, or unpredictable everyday events and experiences as uncertain. Our brains then generate sensations, thoughts, and action plans to keep us safe from the uncertain element, and we live to see another day. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number. 03. Preemption means that a strategy is designed to prevent a rival from starting some particular activity. In some case, a preemptive move may simply be an announcement of some intent that might discourage rivals from doing the same. The idea of preemption implies that timing is sometimes very important. A decision or an action at one point in time might be much more rewarding than doing it at a different time point. Preemption may involve upweighting advertising for a period before and during when a new entrant launches into a market. The intent is to make it more difficult for the new entrant's advertising to make an impression on potential buyers. Product proliferation is another potential preemption strategy. The general idea is to launch a large variety of product variants so that there is very little in the way of market demand that is not accommodated. Arguably, if a market is already filled with product variants, it is more difficult for competitors to find untapped pockets of market demand. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number. 04. By noticing the relation between their own actions and resultant external changes, infants develop self-efficacy, a sense that they are agents of the perceived changes. Although infants can notice the effect of their behavior on the physical environment, it is in early social interactions that infants most readily perceive the consequence of their actions. People have perceptual characteristics that virtually assure that infants will orient toward them. They have visually contrasting and moving faces. They produce sound, provide touch, and have interesting smells. In addition, people engage with infants by exaggerating their facial expressions and inflecting their voices in ways that infants find fascinating. But most importantly, these antics are responsive to infants' vocalizations, facial expressions, and gestures. People vary the pace and level of their behavior in response to infant actions. Consequentially, early social interactions provide a context where infants can easily notice the effect of their behavior. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 05. Even though institutions like the World Bank use wealth to differentiate between developed and developing countries, they also agree that development is more than economic growth. World Bank. Development can also include the social and environmental changes that are caused by or accompany economic growth, some of which are positive and thus may be negative. Awareness has grown and continues to grow that the question of how economic growth is affecting people and the planet needs to be addressed. Countries are slowly learning that it is cheaper and causes much less suffering to try to reduce the harmful effects of an economic activity or project at the beginning, when it is planned, than after the damage appears. To do this is not easy and is always imperfect. But an awareness of the need for such an effort indicates a greater understanding and moral concern than did the previous widespread attitude that focused only on creating new products and services. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 06. Despite abundant warnings that we shouldn't measure ourselves against others, most of us still do. We're not only meaning-seeking creatures but social ones as well, constantly making interpersonal comparisons to evaluate ourselves, improve our standing, and enhance our self-esteem. But the problem with social comparison is that it often backfires. When comparing ourselves to someone who's doing better than we are, we often feel inadequate for not doing as well. This sometimes leads to what psychologists call malignant envy, the desire for someone to meet with misfortune. I wish she didn't have what she has. Also, comparing ourselves with someone who's doing worse than we are risks scorn, the feeling that others are something undeserving of our beneficence. She's beneath my notice. Then again, comparing ourselves to others can also lead to benign envy, the longing to reproduce someone else's accomplishments without wishing them ill. I wish I had what she has, which has been shown in some circumstances to inspire and motivate us to increase our efforts in spite of a recent failure. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 07. Anchoring bias describes the cognitive error you make when you tend to give more weight to information arriving early in a situation compared to information arriving later, regardless of the relative quality or relevance of that initial information. Whatever data is presented to you first when you start to look at a situation can form an anchor, and it becomes significantly more challenging to alter your mental course away from this anchor than it logically should be. A classic example of anchoring bias in emergency medicine is triage bias, where whatever the first impression you develop, or are given, about a patient tends to influence all subsequent providers seeing that patient. For example, imagine two patients presenting for emergency care with aching jaw pain that occasionally extends down to their chest. Differences in how the intake providers label the chart jaw pain vs. chest pain, for example, create anchors that might result in significant differences in how the patients are treated. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 08. Organisms living in the deep sea have adapted to the high pressure by storing water in their bodies, some consisting almost entirely of water. Most deep-sea organisms lack gas bladders. They are cold-blooded organisms that adjust their body temperature to their environment, allowing them to survive in the cold water while maintaining a low metabolism. Many species lower their metabolism so much that they are able to survive without food for long periods of time, as finding the sparse food that is available expends a lot of energy. Many predatory fish of the deep sea are equipped with enormous mouths and sharp teeth, enabling them to hold on to prey and overpower it. Some predators hunting in the residual light zone of the ocean have excellent visual capabilities, while others are able to create their own light to attract prey or a mating partner. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 09. While working as a research fellow at Harvard, B.F. Skinner carried out a series of experiments on rats, using an invention that later became known as a Skinner box. Harvard, B.F. Skinner box. A rat was placed in one of these boxes, which had a special bar fitted on the inside. Every time the rat pressed this bar, it was presented with food. The rate of bar pressing was automatically recorded. Initially, the rat might press the bar accidentally, or simply out of curiosity, and as a consequence receive some food. Over time, the rat learned that food appeared whenever the bar was pressed, and began to press it purposefully in order to be fed. Comparing results from rats given the positive reinforcement of food for their bar pressing behavior with those that were not, or were presented with food at different rates, it became clear that when food appeared as a consequence of the rat's actions, this influenced its future behavior. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 10. One of the keys to insects' successful survival in the open air lies in their outer covering, a hard waxy layer that helps prevent their tiny bodies from dehydrating. To take oxygen from the air, they use narrow breathing holes in the body segments, which take in air passively and can be opened and closed as needed. Instead of blood contained in vessels, they have free-flowing hemolymph, which helps keep their bodies rigid, aids movement, and assists the transportation of nutrients and waste materials to the appropriate parts of the body. The nervous system is modular in a sense. Each of the body segments has its own individual and autonomous brain, and some other body systems show a similar modularization. These are just a few of the many ways in which insect bodies are structured and function completely differently from our own. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 11. All social interactions require some common ground upon which the involved parties can coordinate their behavior. In the interdependent groups in which humans and other primates live, individuals must have even greater common ground to establish and maintain social relationships. This common ground is morality. This is why morality often is defined as a shared set of standards for judging right and wrong in the conduct of social relationships. No matter how it is conceptualized, whether as trustworthiness, cooperation, justice, or caring, morality is always about the treatment of people in social relationships. This is likely why there is surprising agreement across a wide range of perspectives that a shared sense of morality is necessary to social relations. Evolutionary biologists, sociologists, and philosophers all seem to agree with social psychologists that the interdependent relationships within groups that humans depend on are not possible without a shared morality. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 11 Number 12. Every farmer knows that the hard part is getting the field prepared. Inserting seeds and watching them grow is easy. In the case of science and industry, the community prepares the field, yet society tends to give all the credit to the individual who happens to plant a successful seed. Planting a seed does not necessarily require overwhelming intelligence. Creating an environment that allows seeds to prosper does. We need to give more credit to the community in science, politics, business, and daily life. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great man. Martin Luther King Jr. Perhaps his greatest strength was his ability to inspire people to work together to achieve, against all odds, revolutionary changes in society's perception of race and in the fairness of the law. But to really understand what he accomplished requires looking beyond the man. Instead of treating him as the manifestation of everything great, we should appreciate his role in allowing America to show that it can be great. MTC. Good job.